Good evening to you and welcome. You're watching the Express Update on Clock TV. I am Peter Nsia. We're also on Go TV, channel 184. Coming up in our news this evening, NIMOS launches major operation to clear illegal mining along Brim River in Chebi. Also coming up, Honorable Abena Osei Asare calls for probe into reported 1.7 billion BOG good board loss. These and many other stories coming up shortly. Please do stay with us. And now the news in detail. Economist and Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Godfred Alifo Bobkin, has called for a politically neutral and efficient civil service to drive national development. Speaking at a public lecture as part of the 2026 Civil Service Week celebration and 2025 award ceremony, Professor Bobkin cautioned against political considerations influencing recruitment into the public service. He stressed that an efficient civil service is essential to supporting private sector growth and achieving Ghana's development goals.
In an increasingly polarized nation, divided along political lines, what becomes the balancing act and the moderating element should be the civil service. Your neutrality, your objectivity will be key. For that reason, we should not allow politics to influence recruitment into the public service and the civil service. It's one poison you don't need to be advised to take. An inefficient civil service within the broader perspective of public service represents cost to the private sector as they interact with civil service or the public sector. There is no way we can transform this economy in a private sector-led development without an efficient public sector. Countries that have transformed, and you will soon see, they did so by ensuring that the public sector, civil service, were the most efficient. And the kind of competition you have to go through to be recruited into the civil service or the public service was even higher than what private sector was putting in place.
Professor Alifo Bobkin further urged civil servants to uphold integrity, put Ghana's interests first, and remain professional and politically neutral regardless of the government in power.
We must uphold public integrity. Our allegiance must be to Ghana. In our own small way, in our own big way, let's put Ghana first. Let's give Ghana a chance. And this will reflect in how we work, regardless of who is in power, right? Giving the objective advice, expertise in terms of input and the rest of them. We need to do that.
Away from that story, the National Anti-Illegal Mining Operations Secretariat, NIMOS, has launched a major operations to clear illegal mining activities along the Brim River and its surrounding catchment areas in Chebi in the eastern region. The exercise forms part of the Secretariat's nationwide effort to protect critical water bodies and restore rivers affected by illegal mining. NIMOS says the operation is also aimed at improving the condition of the Brim River to support the resumption of water extraction and treatment by the Ghana Water Company Limited, whose operations have been affected by severe pollution and riverbed degradation. The Secretariat has urged communities along the river to support the task force and called on illegal miners operating within the river corridor to immediately stop their activities. It added that it will continue working with security agencies and other stakeholders to protect the Brim River and restore it as a dependable source of water. To some more news this evening, the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee and former Deputy Finance Minister, Abena Osei Asare, has called on President John Dramani Mahama to demand accountability over the reported $1.7 billion loss incurred by the Bank of Ghana in its dealing with Gold Board, as cited by the IMF. He says the matter requires a thorough investigation, noting that the amount involved is significant and could have been used to support other sectors of the economy, create jobs and improve livelihoods.
Issues pertaining to the Gold Board, the Bank of Ghana, and the funded FX forward sale. I'm delighted that the IMF has brought this to the fore in its Article 4 consultation, the recent one that they issued in August. And According to the IMF, it says that the domestic gold purchase program recorded losses to the tune of 1.7 billion US dollars. But if you would recall, the Bank of Ghana in their 2025 financial statement reported 214 million US dollars as the loss. This loss of 1.7 billion is equivalent to 22 billion Ghana cedis, and that is 1.5% of our GDP. And this same 22 billion Ghana cedis was the amount that was used to salvage the banks, the customers, the 1.2 million depositors who had lost their funds as a result of the banking issues. So clearly, you see the quantum of monies that are going waste. 22 billion Ghana cedis loss. And this same equivalent of 22 billion was used to save 1.2 million depositors. So that is why we are concerned. That is why we are talking about it, that just one entity using 22.5 billion as a loss. The Minister of Health is complaining about the fact that he needs 6 billion Ghana cedis to recruit nurses. And here we are, 22 billion Ghana cedis going down the drain, when we could have used that amount of money to support the recruitment exercise at the Ministry of Health to enable the many nurses who are currently at home, to enable them to be employed. And for this one, it's going to be a win-win. The 22 billion, government is not going to recover. But if they had spent 6 billion out of the 22 billion, you will employ the nurses, unemployment rates will come down, and these same nurses will help you generate more revenue because they are going to pay income taxes. So this is where our concern is, and this is where we are coming from. 22 billion Ghana cedis going down the drain, when just a fraction of it could have been used to support the Ministry of Health to recruit the number of nurses they are talking about. Another issue is this. BOG recorded 214 million US dollars as the loss. IMF comes, IMF is privy to all the data and everything and says, no, the loss is not 214 million dollars as you recorded, but 1.7 billion dollars. I'm asking, the accounting firm that audited Bank of Ghana, I want to hear from them on this. Because, so how did they treat the difference of close to 1.4 billion? How was it treated? That it cannot be seen in their financial statement for BOG to declare that they only made a loss of 214 million Ghana cedis. And then the IMF comes and says, no, that loss on Gold Board is 1.7 billion. So I'm also calling out the accounting firm that audited Bank of Ghana. They should come clean. We want to hear from them. We need an explanation of how they treated the difference of 1.4 billion. That is very, very important because here their credibility is at stake. And when you look at what attributed to the losses, I find it a bit hard to believe, but clearly that is what happened. Let me state that IMF said that these are assay fees paid to the Gold Board. They pay fees and then we end up making a loss of 1.7 billion. These are discounts applied to gold sold to the off-takers. Even the small gold sellers around, they don't sell gold and make losses. Yet we give off-takers discounts. I don't understand. We are expecting Gold Board not to insult, elevate the conversation, give us explanation, because it's of concern to everybody. If you can make a loss of 22 billion, when 6 billion of that loss can be used to employ more than 10,000 nurses, clearly you have a case to tell the people of Ghana, respectfully. And as a result of this, we all know that the negative position of BOG increased from 58 billion to 93 billion. A huge gap, close to about 40 billion. And all government could do in the mid-year budget was to give them a paltry sum of 5 billion Ghana cedis. You ask yourself, you give Bank of Ghana that you have helped to make a loss of close to 40 billion, just 5 billion. And then 2 working days before the financial year ends, you give one entity, not an entity that takes care of our money, not an entity that cuts across. You give that entity 4.5 billion Ghana cedis. You ask yourself, all the ministries, departments, and agencies, ask them if the budget that was voted for them for Parliament for the year 2025, if they had 100% of their budget. No ministry, not even ministries that are pursuing government policy. It didn't happen. You ask Free SHS, you ask Ministry of Agric, you ask Ministry of Roads, you ask Ministry of Interior. They are all managing very important government policies. You ask them whether their budget, their full budget, was given to them at the end of 2025, let alone just 48 hours to the end of the year. It's never happened. And so if we are, Goldboard is happy saying that, they made a profit of 909 million Ghana cedis. We all should be thinking, if that money wasn't given at the dawn of time, the huge losses Goldboard would have been making, coupled with the huge loss the Bank of Ghana has already incurred on their behalf. President Mahama, we are asking you to call for proper and further investigations into what is happening at Goldboard. I am temporarily relieved that at least Bank of Ghana from 1st of July 2026 is no more spending on Goldboard as it used to be. But then, the program that Goldboard is implementing now ought to be brought to Parliament, because Parliament approved their budget. It ought to be brought to Parliament. It's an entity where government also spends money, and that is why the Auditor General audits them. They ought to bring the program to Parliament to see whether they will be implementing the program as they have stated. And then from time to time, they also need to report how far they have come to Parliament. It is not a few times you just, we implemented this and we have made a profit of this, a profit of that. You ask yourself, so if you could make a profit of the 75 million Ghana cedis that you are talking about, why do you allow Bank of Ghana to incur a loss of 22 billion Ghana cedis on your behalf? Clearly, we ought to look into this. This is not about Goldboard coming out with insults. We want them to elevate the discussion. Tell us their side of the story. The insults will not let the $1.7 billion loss go away. It will not let it go away. Rather, it will tell on you the kind of leader you are. Come forth, tell us if there's something, some support that government needs to, come up with to help you manage the place to make profits throughout the year. You should let us know. But so we expect the conversation to be elevated. We expect some transparency. We expect some accountability. And not contradiction in numbers as is being put out there. So, President Mahama, somewhere last year, you engaged the SOEs, and then you mentioned that SOEs that are not making profit or SOEs that are not thriving, you either close them down or you merge them. So we want you to walk the talk. Look into Goldboard. Look into the losses that they have incurred so far and see how best you can salvage the situation. We want you to walk the talk and help save the little resources that we have. Already, you've introduced more than 8 new taxes and it's still not yielding the revenue numbers that you want. So if there's an opportunity to save some money and use it in other equally important places, we are all for it. And we ask that you do so. Thank you.
On to our last story, a major demonstration has taken place in the Brekum East municipality, where residents, farmers, and civil society groups have joined forces to protest illegal mining activities, threatening farmlands and water bodies in the area. Groups including the Brekum Mine Citizens Association, Brekum Youth Accountability and Development, and Brekum Citizens and Associates organized the protest. And that's all we have for you on Express Updates. Thank you for staying and sticking with us. I'm Peter Nsia. Remember, the news keeps changing every day, but integrity must never change. Do enjoy the rest of our programs.